You're entering Corsi Nation.
Dr. Corsi has a major update on the investigation into ActBlue through gods5stones.com. I'm Chris Cordani, your producer here at Corsi Nation. Let's get right into it. To help, log on to gods5stones.com for information.
ActBlue. This is, I think, the critical discussion for today. And we're doing a briefing which I want to prepare you for what's coming. And I think some information we're going to share today is about to be in the public record. Now, for this information that I'm going to share today has been already given to Ed Martin at the Department of Justice, and will be taken in, I believe, as the expanded part of the ActBlue investigation already underway. ActBlue announcement from Trump that he, in fact, had ActBlue executive order. Okay, you should see now the April 24th executive order 2005 investigation into unlawful straw donor foreign contributions in the American elections. Okay, so this reads that federal law prohibits making political contributions in the name of another person, as well as contributions by foreign nationals. Notwithstanding these laws designed to protect American democracy, press reports and investigations by congressional committees have generated extremely troubling evidence that online fundraising platforms have been willing participants in schemes to launder excessive and prohibited contributions to political candidates and committees. Okay, so this investigation is already ongoing, and what it involved was that ActBlue would take someone's identity, their name and their social security number, and they'd begin making contributions to Democratic political campaigns. And they would do maybe 1,000 contributions under that person's name. The person wouldn't even know it. Completely unaware to the person whose identity was stolen. Now, this was detected, and these activities undermine the integrity of our electoral processes. And this, I want you to see, is part of the entire investigation that comes from we have found previously the algorithms in the state boards of election that permit the creation of thousands of false records that yet get legitimate state IDs and can be used in mail-in ballot fraud. Now what Trump is exposing is that the Democrats have rigged the money flow into Democratic political campaigns by getting this ActBlue, which is essentially a big funnel. Democrats said to everybody, Act Blue instead of Act Red. In other words, be Democratic, ACT Blue. It's a Democratic, cute way of saying, I am Democratic, I'm acting Democratic. So ActBlue accumulated billions of dollars. Don't show you how much in a minute or two, but they then could contribute to campaigns of individual Democrats with this money. And so they stole identities in order to get this money funneled into the campaigns, which means that this pool of money was not from individual Democrats who wanted to contribute to a particular campaign. Because you could do that normally, it's very easy. You use your social security number, make a contribution to the campaign, record it under your social security number, it shows up in the Federal Election Committee reports. Okay, but this is going around that. It subverts the idea of accountability. Now, this was found by the Department of Justice, and I want to show you that, in fact, there was a criminal indictment. I'm going to start sharing the screen again so you can see this. The criminal indictment, and I'm sharing it now, came from the the Criminal Division of the Department of Justice, which showed that on October 10th, 2024, the Department of Justice announced that TD Bank, which, by the way, is Toronto Dominion, the 10th largest bank in the United States, pleaded guilty to conspiring to fail to maintain an anti-money laundering program that complies with the Bank Security Act. They failed to comply with almost all the regulations. The currency transaction reports, so that the parent company, TD Bank's holding company, together with TD Bank, National Bank of the United States, pleaded guilty to these and related charges. Okay, so that from 2014, skipping down a couple lines, through 2022, TD Bank failed to add any new scenarios to its transaction monitoring program, despite known deficiencies, existing money laundering risks, and the introduction of new products and services. Now, TD Bank, throughout this time, TD Bank intentionally excluded all domestic automated clearinghouses, the ACH transactions, mostly check activity, and numerous other transactions from its automated monitoring system, resulting in 92% of total transaction volume going unmonitored from 2018 to 2024. Now that's almost incomprehensible that the bank got away with simply ignoring all federal reporting requirements for essentially, 6 years through April 2024. And this amounted to 18.3 trillion in transaction activities that are now suspect as money laundering. Okay, now the problem is that when the Department of Justice, and this is the Obama Department of Justice still reporting this, they only listed minor ratings. TD Bank's failures enabled 3 money laundering networks, one of which were assisted by 5 TD Bank employees, to collectively transfer more than $670 million through TD Bank accounts between 2019 and 2013. And so they agreed to pay $1.8 billion in penalties and to now, okay, so that's the only case they reported. 670 million of 18.3 billion. Okay, now that's, first of all, where did that money come from? Where did it go? And TD Bank is being let off the hook for all except a small fraction of what it did. So the United States Department of Justice, and again, this is now in October 2024, fined $3 billion for violating the bank secrecy again for those years. And the $3 billion secret fine was the largest ever imposed, and it was imposed for, again, record breaking, but it was not tied directly to the, this was the 5 employees with the 670 million and gifts, etc. But you don't find the ActBlue fines. So the investigation that's currently going on in the Justice Department has been focused largely on the campaign contributions that have been made by ActBlue stealing identities. What I'm going to release today is a much, much bigger crime. And it comes from Sean Taylor. Okay, this is Sean Taylor's deck, and he's talking about the online platform. It was formed in 2004 to gather small dollar contributions. It served as a nonprofit PAC. It functioned as a conduit for individual contribution, donors giving to ActBlue, which then forwarded the funds to specified campaigns. And a key part of the democratic fundraising infrastructure being processed over 1.6 billion in transactions to left-leaning campaigns and organizations as of 2025. Now, it's essentially a blueprint for money laundering, because ActBlue launched in 2004, raised over $16 billion. It's powered by the ActBlue Technical Services and a team of 65 engineers. It includes various programs, Ruby on Rails, PostgreSQL, etc. And it was created by 2 tech guys, one from Harvard and one from MIT. And the CEO since 2024 has been Regina Wallace Jones. This whole organization was created by engineering talent from MIT, Harvard, Stanford, UC Berkeley, and it's a platform that's tied to the MIT ecosystem, and it shows the deep academic and open source roots of the platform. Now, they essentially captured and stored donation information for 14.9 million users by 2025, but that wasn't the major source of their funds. Let's look at how much money they raised over the years. 2004 started out slow at $5 to $10 million. That was the first launch. By the midterm in 2006, it was $25 to $35 million. By 2012, which was the re-election of Obama, it was at $400 to $500 million. But then it really started, after Obama had his second term, starting in 2012, it started taking off. So that by the 2016 presidential election, Trump, it had $1.3 billion to $1.5 billion, and it reached its peak in the 2020 election at $3.5 billion to $3.8 billion when Biden was elected. Okay, now that much money did not come from individual contributors. That money came from somewhere else. And so therefore, we're going to want to know, where did the money come from? And what he points out is that there's a small group of people who are in this. By the way, the Election Fairness Institute is Mark Fincham of Arizona, who's been doing a lot of reporting on this. Now you see the founders, these two gentlemen from Harvard and MIT, but I want you to focus here on the CEO was Regina Wallace-Jones. We're getting a rainstorm here, so you may hear the rain in the background. The CFO was this Nicole Paulding, CEO Aaron Hill, and the director Kimberly Pastor Allen. Now these people are involved in a money laundering scheme that involved mortgages. Okay, and Regina Wallace-Jones is a graduate of the University of California. She's got a background in technology, public policy, and business leadership. And I hope the rain won't last too long, but it'll be there for a while. She built her career at Yahoo. She became involved in real estate in California, Texas, and Virginia, managing multi-million-dollar properties. But through her growing network and political fundraising, she joined ActBlue as technical services director, and then she moved to be the president. Okay, now we're going to look at a transaction that she bought a house. Okay, let's take a look at this property. This is a property at 1208 Cameron Lane in California, and it's a single family home in Palo Alto. Now you can see that it's really a pretty small property. You can judge by the car. Its value today is $1.666 million. 5 bedrooms, 3 baths, only 2,668 square feet, which is not a very big house. It's built in 2002. It's single family. It's on a 6,621 square foot lot. Okay, so it's a really fairly tiny house in Palo Alto, California. Okay, now let's go back to the article on this. Well, we'll go back actually to what Sean Taylor showed us about it. Okay, so here's the research that Sean Taylor did on this house. You can see that in 1999, Stefan Jones, who was the husband of Regina Wallace-Jones, bought the house for $252,000, and that was on 7/27/1999. But then you'll notice that on 7/19/2025, this Renee Garciliano who was part of ActBlue, is the buyer and bought the house from Regina Jones and Stefan Jones. And there are there's 4 separate mortgages recorded for that day. The sale price is at $600,000, but you got one mortgage for $480,000 from Morton Gadget Incorporated, another $540,000 from Mortgage Gadget Incorporated, a $60,000 loan unlisted from someone unknown, and a $480,000 loan also from someone unknown. Now these are all recorded on LexisNexis. LexisNexis records all mortgage transactions that are made because the banks report them. But yet when you search the mortgage, you can't find these amounts. And 4 separate loans on the same day, which amount to well over $1.5 million, is again far too much for a house that has this limited value. And 4 separate mortgages is a red flag in mortgage fraud for any given transaction for any given house at any given time. Now, if we continue to look at how this was done, if we come up here and go through more of the mortgage history, we're going to see that if we'll go back to the article, which gives you the entire transaction history of this. I'm going to go back here to the article. This property goes on. So there's the loans they made. By the time it comes to this day is on May 21, 2002, they start listing the sales price as $68,950,000, and they get loans of $10,035,000 and $55,125,000 on this house. Then Regina Wallace Jones gets 2 additional mortgage loans from Wells Fargo, one totaling $551,000 and $100,000. This is on the same day in May 21, 2002. Okay, so what Taylor alleges is the records establish that on a 2,668 square foot house with an assessed value of under $1 million in 2024, over $1 million today, they got $57,632,000 in mortgage loans. Okay, so which again, when you come back to the report from Whistleblower, you can see this says that going through this, so the 2005 multiple sales to Garciliano Rene from Jones, 4 deeds recorded one day with varying loan amounts with identical buyers and sellers is synthetic, okay, which means it's made up, fake. And a possible loan to value ratio greatly inflated. They actually got a $48 million loan on that house. Okay, another deed with $6 million loan tied to the same $600,000 sale, duplicate title filing with various fictitious debt layers. Okay, so they're doing classic mortgage loan fraud, and none of this appears in the deed. Okay, so now you see they've taken a house that they bought for under $1 million, $680,000, and what they've done in the process is they managed to get over $50 million in loans out on that house. Now, what this is clear signs of money laundering. But when you have it inflate up to, by 2014, billions of dollars going through this, and ActBlue is getting these mortgages at the top level where they're buying houses and getting this money out. This is clearly a bank which is taking in illegal money and sending out the proceeds through a mortgage loan fraud, so the perpetrators of the fraud get their cash. Okay, the key to money laundering is the following. If you've got illegal activity, you've got to get your money into a bank. So if you're a drug dealer, I caught HSBC in 2011 laundering money. What HSBC did is they were working with the drug cartels, and the drug cartels would have massive amounts of cash, but you can't have $100 bills stuck into the back of the trailer component of a semi-trailer truck. Drive up to a taco stand and take out a $100 bill from the back end of the truck in order to buy your tacos for lunch. You've got to get the money into a bank. And so what HSBC was doing is they were taking people who had left the bank, they were taking their name and social security number, they were running millions of dollars through the account, and then they'd zero out the balance of the account. I had a banker from Long Island who was trying to get somebody's attention because his job was as a relationship manager to go out and try to get businesses that had accounts with HSBC to take new services. And so he would go out to a business that was running millions of dollars through their accounts. It looked like a great account. And when he got out there, there was nobody. It was an empty building or an empty office. And so he finally called me, said, show me the records. I've worked in banking. I looked at it. It was immediate money laundering, obviously. I called up one gentleman and said, sir, it's going to be a very unusual call. He was 86 years old. He owned and was getting rent from apartment buildings. And I said, now, sir, he lived in an apartment in Manhattan. I said, sir, it's going to be a very unusual call, but is your social security number? And I read it to him. He said, how'd you get that? I said, well, I'll get to that in a minute. I said, but did you run $3 million through your HSBC account last week? He said, I closed that account 5 years ago. I said, well, you better give me the name of your attorney, because the bank just ran $5 million through your account, and then they zeroed it out. Okay, so the Department of Homeland Security contacted me. I started publishing the World Net Daily, and then I was contacted by the Senate Permanent Investigating Committee. I gave them all my data, met with the Department of Homeland Security in an unmarked windowless building in downtown Manhattan, and they were fined a $1.8 billion fine. Loretta Lynch did the fine, and nobody went to jail. So we got the same thing here. And now Ed Martin is taking on the case, and this is quickly going to become a case in the Department of Justice, but it will probably take a while for it to get there. It could take a little bit more publicity of what we're doing in podcasts like this. I'm giving you a preview of this, and I want to show you one more case, and then I'm going to stop and take some questions. Following that, I'm going to show you where the money comes from, because the money comes from the open border. And the conclusion of this is going to be that the Biden administration opened up the border of Mexico in order to get child sex trafficking, child organ harvesting, cocaine from the Sinaloa drug cartel, and fentanyl from China. And the proceeds of that ended up in ActBlue and was taken out through these mortgage loans to fund Democratic Party campaigns and to fund Antifa and Black Lives Matter. And I'm going to try to prove that to you now. So this is going to be one of the most shocking cases, I think, in American history, because what we're going to demonstrate is that the Democratic Party has been funding itself through child sex trade. And these illegal, I mean, if that's not evil enough to draw the American public into saying, why do we need the Democratic Party? I don't know what it would take. Because certainly to me, this is one of the most criminally evil schemes I've ever heard or thought of. I want to read this first from an article that has not yet been published that I am writing. Okay, there's another property. This one is at 1208 Cameron Lane in Daly City, California. Okay, now this property was currently assessed at $788,000, and Stefano Jones purchased it for $281,000 initially, and a loan that he got for that amount of money, purchased it. Today its value is $788,000. It's a small single-family residence. However, by 2005, the sale price was listed at $60 million, and this Rene Garciliano purchased this residence from Stepford Jones and Regina Jones after obtaining two loans amounting to $54 million from an unidentified source. And I'll show you that in a minute in Mark Taylor's notes. Mark Fincham is a good friend. He is in the Arizona legislature. He runs the Election Fairness Institute. Now, what he showed with regards to this property, okay, so they sold this two-family residence to Rene Garciliano 4 times. The first 2 sales were $600,000 each. 2 separate mortgage amounts are shown, again, for this mortgage AGEIT, I get it, for $540,000 and $480,000. But then 2 additional sales appear in the history on the same day in the amount of $60 million each, with $48 million and $6 million funded by a private cash lender. Attempts were made to retrieve deeds for these properties. One of the deeds shows not on file, and for the others, when purchased by the Election Freedom Institute, shows the online systems respond with an error message, not available. Now, the problem is that without access to FinCEN, which is a money laundering tracking system that's maintained by the Department of Treasury, you can't track where the money came from. But yet we've got ample evidence that ActBlue was the one who, ActBlue has been doing this massive amount of mortgage loan fraud, taking money out of ActBlue, not just giving it to campaigns, but funding organizations, non-governmental organizations like Antifa, Black Lives Matter, that hate America, want to destroy the country. The second part of what I'm going to demonstrate here is where the money comes from. And that's going to be equally shocking, I guarantee you. I've been working on this now for about 6 months and ready to go public with it. Okay, so if we come again to there's multiple sales, again, to Garciliano Rene from Jones, from Regina Jones and Stepford Jones, 4 deeds recorded the same day, varying loan amounts, all with the identical buyer to sellers, synthetic, impossible loan-to-value ratio, greatly inflated, likely fictitious or placeholder loan, duplicate title filing with various fictitious debt levels, appears to mirror synthetic layering patterns. Money layering is common to the scheme of money laundering. In other words, the money comes in different tranches for different reasons, and it's hard to track to the same purpose or the same source. 2 deeds filed the same day, recycling maneuver, all of these are clear money laundering schemes. What we've done to this point is I've shown you how ActBlue is clearly a criminal scheme. Now the next question is going to be, where do they get the money? This article, which will be published hopefully next week by American Thinker, is how Obama and the Catholic Church working to open the border. This article, so Mike McCormick, who was a former White House stenographer assigned to Vice President Biden, has written 2 books. And I've done a lot of work with Mike McCormick. The first book he wrote was this one, which was The Case to Impeach and Imprison Joe Biden, and it was written by Mike McCormick. Okay, this was published by Post Hill Press, which is Anthony Zaccardi, my publisher. Second book was An Almost Insurmountable Evil, again by Mike McCormick, and it's how Obama's deep state defiled the Catholic Church and executed the Wuhan pandemic. So Mike McCormick was assigned to Vice President Biden for 6 years as official White House stenographer. And what he found was that Archbishop McCarrick, Cardinal McCarrick, from the Catholic Church, who was from Washington, D.C., who was a homosexual and a pedophile. He slept with seminarians and also had affairs with the altar boys. Diverted U.S. taxpayer funds and Catholic charities into this cocaine smuggling and child sex trafficking operation at the southern border, in a conspiracy with the now imprisoned former president of Honduras, which was Juan Orlando Hernandez. So in 2014, the Obama administration, under McCarrick's urging, went to El Salvador, and President Hernandez, who was a member of the Sinaloa drug cartel, and they formed a Alliance for Prosperity. And Congress allocated $300 million to this alliance. Vice President Biden led the initiative to have Congress approve $700 million in 2016. So McCormick charged that a member of Joe Biden's cabinet, who was Veteran Affairs Secretary Dennis McConough, was a witness to these deeds performed by McCarrick in 2013 to 2016, while McConough was President Obama's White House Chief of Staff. And so the White House logs show that McCarrick visited McDonough numerous times in this time interval, and Vox.com reported the United States government and the American public were startled by an influx of children traveling from Central America to the Rio Grande Valley in the U.S. in the spring of the summer of 2014. The number of children reached a crisis point. Okay, Vox also noted that during fiscal year 2014, which was October 2013 to September 2014, 68,541 unaccompanied children were apprehended at the U.S.-Mexican border, a 77% increase over the previous year. Now, in 2021, investigation of the Archbishop of St. Paul concluded that McDonough's brother, Father Kevin McDonough, a top official of the Archdiocese, had not always demonstrated the sufficiently sound judgment in handling allegations of ministerial misconduct or attending to his duties to prevent harm in safer environments. In other words, McDonough, the priest McDonough, was covering up the priest pedophile ring. In 2014, Obama held a White House meeting with President Molina of Guatemala, President Karen of El Salvador, President Hernandez of Honduras. Obama noted in his public remarks it was to discuss the rise of unaccompanied children traveling from Central American countries to the U.S. border. And Biden and Hernandez were photographed at that time. That photograph has simply since disappeared from the internet. At least McCormick copied it, so we have a copy of the original photograph. Subsequent to the photograph, McCormick documented that Cardinal McCarrick returned to the White House several times, and these are the times in 2014 that he visited. And then the National Catholic Reporter said McCarrick was a member of Obama's spiritual cabinet. 2014 and 2015, McCarrick had repeated meetings in the Vatican, Pope Francis, numerous Catholic charities, and Honduras were activated, a country that's 34% of the population is Catholic. And the movie The Sound of Freedom featured child sex trafficking in Honduras, a country the U.S. Embassy acknowledges is a destination for women and girls for neighboring countries subject to sex trafficking. In an interview on Texas Public Radio on May 1, 2015, Cardinal Maradiega, the Archdiocese of San Antonio, acknowledged Pope Francis' interest in Honduras and the Alliance for Prosperity. By the way, the son of the previous Honduras president, the son of the president of Honduras, was also arrested and sentenced in 2017 to 24 years for importing cocaine in the United States. And Honduras, and President Hernandez, by the way, was sentenced to 45 years in prison for conspiring to smuggle more than 400 tons of cocaine from 2004 to 2022 years in which Hernandez was, quote, at the center of one of the largest and most violent drug trafficking conspiracies in the world. Okay, so now what McCormick writes, it was in late 2013 that Porfirio Lobo Sosa lost the presidency to Juan Orlando Hernandez. That may have been by design, because almost immediately Orlando Hernandez struck up quite a business relationship with Joe Biden. And Joe's cartel connections grew even stronger because Hernandez was a bad guy, a very bad guy. He and his brother had been smuggling cocaine in the United States for years. For example, one of Hernandez's campaign donors was El Chapo, the former head of the Sinaloa cartel, is now in federal prison. And McCormick reports also that Hernandez was under investigation by the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, commented that approximately $500 million of taxpayer money went to Honduras through this Alliance for Prosperity. Quote, the Hernandez brothers were smuggling tons of cocaine to the United States with impunity, all while under investigation by the DEA, and thanks by Biden, the U.S. government was showering them with cash. And McCarrick concluded the ugly human rights, national security crisis along our southern border, being now overrun by drug smugglers and human traffickers, can be traced directly back to the cartel association of Honduras presidents Porfirio Lobo Sosa and Orlando Hernandez, the evil self-serving foreign relationships of Joe Biden, and the unquestioning support for these evil practices by Joe Biden's key military operative, General John F. Kelly. Let's not forget Obama's invisible hand backed every evil move. Kelly, if you remember, was the chief of staff for Trump, till Trump realized that Kelly was not loyal to Trump. Kelly joined General Milley, of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, refusing to allow U.S. troops to be entered into U.S. cities in 2020 when Black Lives Matter and Antifa were trashing American cities to create a crisis to prevent Trump from being reelected. And Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano, who I'm close to, has repeatedly berated Cardinal McCarrick for engaging in homosexual activity with seminarians and priests. In a letter to the American Catholics entitled Against Spiritual Evenness, Vigano, former apostolic nuncio to the United States, top representative of the Pope of the United States, wrote, along with Catholic charitable organizations, the sum received by American Catholic Church for welcoming immigrants amounts to over $2.4 billion, an exorbitant figure that highlights at least a serious conflict of interest that does not solve the social problems that derive from it in the least. It is gravely detrimental to the entire Catholic Church to have bishops for whom the maintenance of power renders irrelevant the link between the presence of irregular minors on American soil and their exploitation by perverts, pedophiles, organ harvesters, and criminals of all kind. In a private email shared with the author with me, McCormick discussed the role of Pope Francis, and then McCarrick. It's one thing for the Pope to express his views and suggestions to an American president to shape American politics. Another thing when a Pope uses church personnel and assets to promote a policy that puts the church in an alliance that rewards drug smuggling and human trafficking of cartels. Okay, now to tie this all to ActBlue, I go back to Sean Taylor and to Mark Finchem, and I've got quotations from both of them. What happened was that Sean Taylor was investigating the drug smuggling and child sex trafficking that was occurring in Tennessee. He was a police chief in Tennessee. And what he found was that the operation, the evidence we reduced that show that these are all tied in together. So investigating in Tennessee, Sean Taylor found that what was happening was that the money was going into banks from all of the sex trafficking for children and the drugs, and the local officials involved in the Tennessee drug trade and child sex trade were buying $100,000 homes and getting out $1 million loans. And so since he tied the same behavior where he could see it was related to the border activity, he drew the conclusion that the money, they could call it magic mortgage money, coming out to ActBlue also came from the border. And that would be a large enough chunk of money in order to fund the billions that went into ActBlue. Okay, so I've got quotations from both of them, if I can find them here in a minute, that tie this directly to that activity. We have previously been able to determine through the arrest of a person in Tennessee involved in the illegal narcotics trade, we've been able to determine is that thousands of unabandoned children, no parents, and the flow of cocaine and fentanyl coming over the border with Mexico increased substantially after the Obama administration established the Alliance for Prosperity with Honduras. It appears that the illicit funds generated from these activities were being dumped into specific banks, both in the United States and outside the United States, where the banks were complicit in money laundering crimes. We further determined the actors in non-governmental organizations affiliated with ActBlue were drawing the illicit money out of the banks through mortgage loan fraud. And Mark Fincom says, under the Obama-Biden administrations, at the direction of then Department of Homeland Security Director Alejandro Mayorkas, the United States became a white glove delivery service for children we transferred in the hands of child sex traffickers. Cartels came to realize that far more money could be made with children than with drugs. The cartel had to have a means to launder the money, and banks in and outside the United States were happy to participate. The money flowing out of the banks through ActBlue magic mortgages funded the Democratic Party campaign contributions and provided revenue for anti-American NGOs like Antifa and Black Lives Matter, while buying political, legal, and judicial protection, all in the process of disrupting the moral fabric of the nation, and all aimed at destroying Donald Trump. That what we have uncovered here is one of the greatest crimes in the history of the United States. The CIA is obviously involved, because this does not go on without CIA involvement. The Treasury is monitoring all financial transactions, as is the NSA. Our government under Obama and Biden became the biggest child sex trafficker, child sex organ trafficker in the world, in the Democratic Party. We became the largest cocaine and fentanyl dealer in the world. The Democratic Party funded itself with these activities. And the people who were involved knew what they were doing. We're making deals with the Catholic Church, which was going LGBT, to Pope Francis, with Biden and Obama and their LGBT agenda, the supporting of pedophilia as minor attracted adults, and the sex trade supplanted by organ harvesting from children. I mean, these crimes are almost unimaginably evil. And when the American people come to understand that the Democratic Party was involved in this, I don't think there'll be a Democratic Party. And I don't think that people like Obama or Biden or Mayorkas or the whole bunch of them that were involved in this are going to go scot-free. And our nation has been disgraced by their activities. And it's not just the hate for Donald Trump, it's a nearly satanic evil, as far as I'm concerned. And certainly the administration will be hearing it against to keep people in the Department of Justice,